We have been following along in the life of Joseph from the book of Genesis in a series entitled For His Good. Joseph has been on a long journey that began with a couple dreams. One dream was that he was in the fields with his brother, and his stock stood up and his brothers bowed down, 11 of them. And the other dream, that all the stars and the moon and the sun bow down before the star of Joseph. Those two dreams have certainly gotten Joseph in a lot of trouble. His brothers, jealous of his father's love for him and the dreams that he's been given him, his brothers decide we're going to kill him, but then they relent and then just decide to sell him to slave traders. I'm not sure which is worse. Joseph ends up in the land of Egypt, sold to a man named Potiphar, and he lives his life so exceedingly well that Potiphar puts him in charge of his entire house, except Potiphar's wife can't get what she wants, so she makes up a story. Joseph tried to make sport of her, and Potiphar, the one who owns Joseph and is captain of the guard in Pharaoh's army, throws him in prison. As far as Potiphar is concerned, that is where Joseph will stay, never to be freed again. And once again, we see in the life of Joseph that he lives his life so incredibly well that the prison guards put him in charge of the whole prison. It's amazing character, isn't it? Character is formed not in the easy moments of our lives. Character is formed in the fire. Character is formed in temptation. Character is formed when you're accused of wrongdoing and you hold your ground. Character is formed in what you do when life just seems like it isn't fair. That's the story of Joseph. And as the story continues, Joseph has this dream. The dream doesn't go away. But it sure seems like it's taking a long time for it to come to fruition. What do we do when God takes too long? We open our Bibles this morning to the book of Genesis chapter 41 as we continue in the story of Joseph, reading verses 9 to 16. Hear now the reading of God's holy word. Then the chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh, "Today I'm reminded of my shortcomings. Pharaoh was once angry with his servants, and he imprisoned me and the chief baker in the house of the captain of the guard. Each of us had a dream that same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. Now a young Hebrew was there with us, a servant to the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams, and he interpreted them for us, giving us each man the interpretation of his dream. And things turned out exactly as he interpreted to us. I was restored to my position, and the other man was impaled. So Pharaoh sent for Joseph. He was quickly brought from the dungeon. When he had shaved and changed his clothes, he came to Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I had a dream and no one can interpret it, but I have heard it is said that you, when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. I cannot do it, Joseph replied to Pharaoh. But God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Let's pray. Gracious God, we give you thanks for your word. Teach us to be patient as we wait upon the Lord. Pray this in the name of our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. About a month ago, I had to take our dog, Remy, to the vet. I don't like going to the vet. It was just an annual checkup. We just had to get his shots, but it's tough to see those big, burly men come out of that back room where they have to put their dogs down. It's just the saddest place in the world for me to be. And that happened twice when I was there a month ago. It's tough. And so it's generally not a place I want to be. It smells weird, and you get what I'm saying. So So I go there and I'm checking our dog in, and there's this sign that's sitting on the counter. I've never seen this sign before. We've had our dog for 8 or 9 years, and I've gone to the same vet the whole time. But this sign was there, and it was in big, all capital, bold letters with exclamation points. So it seemed like they were very serious about what they were saying. And the sign said this: if you're 10 minutes late for your appointment, you must reschedule and pay a $25 fee. An interesting sign. I don't know why it stuck out to me this day, but it did. Now, if anybody knows me, you know I'm generally an on-time person. I'm generally pretty early. It drives my wife crazy because I have to be 10 to 15 minutes early for just about everything. And it's just as true to form. I get to the vet, our appointment's at 10:40. I get there at 10:30. They take me right back into the room, and then I wait. And I wait. And I wait. We went back into that room at 10:35. We did not see a soul until 11:22. Now, I don't understand why they can charge me $25 for being late, but I don't get $25 when they're late. It just doesn't seem fair. Is their time more? I'm still bitter about it. If you cannot figure that out, I'm thinking of changing vets for this reason alone. Because it's the way that I'm wired, right? I have to sit in this room for almost an hour. And when the nurse comes in, the vet tech comes in, she doesn't even acknowledge that I've been sitting there for 50 minutes. No apology, no sorry we're running late. It's just, and then she can't figure out why I'm annoyed. Put it together here. If you know me at all, this does not suit my personality well to sit in a small 8x8 room for 50 minutes doing nothing. Right? I can't do that. I'm not wired that way. But worst is that Colton begged to come with me to the vet, so I have my 3-year-old in the room too. I don't wait well. It's not in my DNA. Nobody explains Steve Franklin by saying, you know, that Steve is a really patient person. I don't think those sentence has ever come together before. And it's not that I can't wait. I can if I think we're going somewhere. I can be patient in the long haul. If I think we're working towards something to accomplish something, I'm willing to put in the work and to do that and wait for the long haul. But I don't do well just sitting. It's not how I'm wired. It's not my personality. And actually, I fit rather well in this American culture that we live in as a millennial, that we're just so used to not having to wait, right? I don't know if you've noticed this, but recently there are signs on roads down this street and down Meridian Road that slow down, drive like your kids live here. There's a sign right in front of my house for those who haven't seen it, slow down. Why are we in such a hurry? We live in an instant culture. We're used to it, right? The latest cooking craze is the Instapot, and I gotta tell you, it's awesome. Get food like that. Good food, too. We live in a culture where literally somebody will grocery shop for us and then bring it to our car. And if we're too lazy to actually get in the car and drive there, if for a little extra money, they'll bring it to our house. I'm waiting for when they'll start putting it away. We live in a world where we literally have instant information. I read an article the other day that talked about how bar arguments, not that any of us ever got into any of those, but bar arguments have ended because of the cell phone. You just look up the answer. You don't have to argue about facts anymore because it's right. We have instant information. We instantly share our lives with the world. It's right there in front of us. As if fast food wasn't convenient enough, now you have DoorDash that will bring it to your house. We have what we want when we want it. And in many ways, this is awesome. As parents with 4 kids, having other people do our grocery shopping for no extra cost. Convenient. You just have to pull into the parking lot, and they put it in the back of your trunk, and you drive away. It's pretty nice. In many ways, this cultural world that we live in is great, and it's awesome. But in other ways, I'm not sure we pay attention to the difficult things it's creating for us. Because we live in a world, in a time, that just has forgotten how to wait. How to be patient. If you think too, by the way, it's just us young millennials, it's not. It's you too. I had a very fascinating conversation on Wednesday morning as part of our Coffee and Conversations group. It's a question I get every single year. The question is, why don't we sing Christmas songs in Christmas? And the answer is, we do sing Christmas songs during Christmas. It's just that Christmas doesn't start in November. We always want to rush to the next thing. We're in such a hurry to get there. Think about it. We have such a hard time waiting that we live in a culture and a time where people are throwing themselves so far into debt that they don't know how they'll ever get out. Because we've got to have it now. We can't wait. You think we can't wait, walk into Walmart a week before Halloween and see what is all over the displays. It is Christmas. We can't wait. The Advent is actually this perfect picture of a season for us as the church to learn how to wait because we're waiting on Jesus. So I'm just gonna put this out here right now so I don't have to answer this question in a month. That's why we don't sing Christmas songs. Because we're going to wait for Jesus. Because we have to learn how to be patient. We have to learn how to live, actually, in a way that's so countercultural to the world around us that it seems radical, that we wait. We trust that God's at work. And that's the story of Joseph, right? As I said in the introduction, it's our character that's formed in shape, but character is not formed in shape when you're laying on the beach, relaxing, watching the waves come in, right? That doesn't shape and form your character. What shapes and forms us is walking through the fire. What shapes and forms us is that gift that we have to wait and work as we see God's plan unfold in our lives. We so often want to rush through like a kid that can't wait to get to the next stage, that we want to rush through the darkness, we want to rush through the difficult moments, that we actually don't take a step back and let them shape and form us as a gift. And that's the story of Joseph. It's not fair that he's sold by his brothers. It's not fair that he ends up in jail. But his character is formed in the temptation of Potiphar's wife. His character is formed in the way that he lives as a slave and then as a prisoner. And he lives so well that the prison guards put him in charge of the other prisoners. It's about as good as you're going to get as a prisoner. And as he's living in that jail and in that prison, the text tells us at the beginning of chapter 40 that sometime later. So it's not giving us the indication that Joseph gets thrown into jail and then all of a sudden the cupbearer and the chief baker are with him. It's some time. There's a period of time where Joseph has to build up his character and his reputation. And then Pharaoh decides, for whatever reason, we don't know why, this cupbearer, the cupbearer is the person who tastes the drink to make sure it's not poisoned. So basically is this sacrificial lamb every day, every sip he takes, that could be the last sip of his life. That's what he does for Pharaoh. And then the chief baker, the cook, we don't know exactly what they did, but we know Pharaoh's not pleased, and he throws them into the captain of the guard's prison, where Joseph just happens to be. I gotta think, as these people from Pharaoh's house come into prison, Joseph is going, maybe this is my chance. My opportunity. right? And he's in charge of the prisoners, and so these two men have dreams. Joseph says to them, "Look, tell me your dreams. What happened?" And as the cupbearer shares this dream with Joseph, Joseph gives him an interpretation. He says, "In 3 days, you will be restored to the right hand of Pharaoh. You'll be back in your position." And then he puts this qualifier on. He says, "I was forcibly taken from the land of the Hebrews. And then, against my will, and then I was thrown into this jail, this dungeon, even though I've done nothing wrong." And he pleads with the cupbearer, "When you are restored, remember me when you go back to Pharaoh's house." It's an opportunity. Maybe Joseph can be set free. The chief baker, hearing that the cupbearer got such a favorable interpretation, says to Joseph, "Well, why don't you interpret my dream? His dream does not go so well." Joseph says to the chief baker, "Your dream means that in 3 days you will be impaled and killed by Pharaoh for your misdeeds." Man, that's a tough 3 days for the chief baker. But as Joseph interprets, both dreams come to fruition. Both play out just as Joseph had interpreted. And chapter 40 of the book of Genesis ends like this. But the cupbearer did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. And I have to wonder, at this point in the story, is Joseph beginning to think that maybe God has forgotten him as well? He forgot him. One of the greatest days of my young life was when I got my driver's license, but not for the reasons that you might think. It wasn't because I had a sense of freedom when I got my driver's license. It was I was no longer going to be forgotten by my parents wherever I was. My parents are wonderful parents. I love them to death. They were great parents when I was younger and even today. But they forgot me all the time. I get it now. They had 6 kids. It's hard to keep the schedule of all of your kids. But I can't tell you how many nights I spent sitting on the stairs of the school waiting for my parents to come get me from practice, where I would just pick up my book bag and walk the 1.5 miles home. Sometimes in the snow. Uphills both ways. But sometimes it really was in the snow. And I walked through the door, and my dad would go, "Oh my gosh, I forgot." All the time. It got to the point where I would have to go to the payphone. That's right, the payphone in the lobby of the school. But I wouldn't spend a quarter to get a ride home, right? And I didn't have it because I spent it on pop for lunch. So I had to call collect. That's right. People under 20 are like, "What the heck is he talking about?" I'd call collect, and that commercial, remember that commercial? That was my life as a kid. I would call collect, and my parents would say hello, and then the collect person would say, "State your name," and I'd say, "Pick me up," and then I'd hang up. It hurts to be forgotten, doesn't it? It hurts to be forgotten. Some of those walks home where you're just like, "I can't believe you forgot me again." And my parents were loving parents. They were great parents. My dad is a little forgetful in his things. But it hurts. When you think that nobody knows you, nobody knows where you are, nobody's thinking about you, it hurts. Sometimes when we find ourselves in the darkness of life, we start to wonder, have I been forgotten? When the grief just won't lift, wonder, has God forgotten me? we're stuck, and there's nothing we can do about the circumstances around us. And all we can do is wait, because we can't control it. I wonder, have I been forgotten? It's easy to get impatient and to give up. It's easy to let go. It's easy to say, well, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. God clearly isn't working the way that I want him to be working. I don't need this. Character is formed, shaped in fire. It's easy to let go. The gospel calls us to hold on. It's easy to feel like we've been forgotten. God is working this plan out in our lives, often in ways we just can't see it yet. My parents never really forgot me. They may have forgot to pick me up. They never forgot me. God does not forget Joseph. God just has a plan. See, often when we can't no longer change the circumstances around us, the only thing we can actually change is ourselves. Paul writes in Romans that Jerry read for us today that our struggles aren't even worth comparing to the glory that God is going to reveal in us. He doesn't say to us. He says in us. Our struggles aren't worth comparing to what God is going to do. So, we have to hold on. We have to hold on to hope. For hope not in what we see or the circumstances around us, but hope in what is unseen, the promise of life with God. And the promise of life with God is never, never easy. It's not the promise that everything will go according to your plan. It's the promise that all will be well, that God is going to redeem and restore all things, and that includes your story and your life. That's the promise. We've got to hold on to the dreams that God has given us. Trust and believe that He's working all of those things for His good and for His glory that will be revealed in you. In you. It would be 2 years. 2 years. Joseph sits in that prison and waits. Pharaoh is stuck with a dream. No one knows it. No one can interpret it. Nobody knows what it means. Pharaoh's stuck with a dream, and then all of a sudden, the cupbearer. Think about the story. If the cupbearer isn't thrown into prison with Joseph, there's nothing to remember. If Joseph isn't put in charge of the prisoners, he doesn't get to hear the dream. If Joseph isn't put in prison by Potiphar because of the lies of Potiphar's wife, then Joseph doesn't get a chance to go before Pharaoh. And if his brothers don't sell him to a traitor, none of it happens. You see, all of a sudden, you begin to see how the pieces of this story that God is pulling together for the redemption and salvation of his people. We know the end of the story. Imagine if you didn't. Joseph is brought before the most powerful man on earth, at least in his view. He's cleaned and he's shaved and he put on clean clothes. This man that has just had this horrible, difficult journey now stands before Pharaoh. Here's the fascinating part of the story. He never gave up on God. You would think at some point Joseph would start to say, like, yeah, this God thing is messed up. Doesn't make any sense. I believed and trusted in God, and I found myself as a slave and a prisoner, and this person who was supposed to help me, he forgot me. I'm not sure about this whole faith thing. It doesn't really seem to make any sense. It doesn't. Because when Pharaoh asks for an interpretation, do you know what Joseph says? His confidence is not in himself. He doesn't have a confidence in his ability or his strength or what he can do. You know what he says at the end of the passage we read today? I can't do it. But God will give you what you ask for. Joseph is saying, it's not by me, but I have total trust and faith in this God who has put me in the struggle for the last few years. That he's going to reveal his glory in me. Joseph doesn't allow his circumstances to dictate his faith and trust in the God of the universe. Why do we? In many ways, it's because we've become so impatient. But the hope we have in the redemption of all things through the person of Jesus Christ and what God is doing in us and through us for his greater kingdom in this world, that hope that we hold on to while we wait for it patiently. The church, called by God to his good work in this world. Our faith is not dictated by our circumstances. When it seems like God is taking too long in your life to show up, all you can do is hold on to hope. All you can do is trust and believe that God is working all things for his good. Because, my friends, he will reveal his glory in you. Hold on. Trust that God is working all things for his good. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Let us now stand and